guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Neighbor Build a Legal Brick Wall on My Land. Claims he owns my garden. My grandparents had been living next to a total jerk for many years and tried their best to ignore it. As they got older, they had less energy to deal with him, so when he wanted to rant and rave they just let him. He would find the smallest things wrong and start to kick up a huge fuss about them. One story my grandpa told me is that when he pulled into the driveway the car was a little bit crooked. It was in the driveway fine though and not sticking into the street. Neighbors still started yelling at him and saying that he needs to keep the car straight, so it doesn't make the whole block look bad. My grandparents were not the kind of people to engage though, and I really admire them for that. They recently had their 45th wedding anniversary, and for a surprise me and my brother pitched in to get them tickets to go on a week-long cruise. I say recently, but it was actually a couple years ago before cruises had to stop for a while. They were so happy because they never got to take a big vacation when they got married because they were so busy working, and then very soon grandma was pregnant with my father. When I got the call from them when they got back from their trip, I was expecting to hear how amazing it was. Instead, I just heard my grandma crying and me not being able to understand any of it until my grandpa took the phone. Me. Grandpa? Is grandma alright? I was concerned something happened with her because I never knew her to get this upset over anything. She usually wasn't extremely emotional. Grandpa. While we were gone, neighbor decided he was going to pull a stunt and your grandma is very hurt by what he did. Me. Did he do something to your house? Your car? Grandpa. No, he didn't do any damage like that. He took down the fence we had and built a huge ugly brick wall in its place. He moved it so far onto our property that your grandmother's flower garden is now half on his side of the yard and half under the wall. My grandma had been gardening all her life and the flowers she took care of were her pride and joy. It was the only thing she really had after she retired. Me. Stay there, I'm coming over. I was angry and wanted to go right up to his house and punch him in the face. I'm not usually a violent guy, but my grandson instincts kicked in and I was angry. I knew that if I hit him, he would have me arrested and my grandparents wouldn't be happy about that. Instead, I went to their house and helped calm my grandma down before telling them that I was going to take care of everything for them. I didn't know much about property issues except from the stories I read online. Still, I wasn't going to let them get stressed out from it all. The first thing I did was went to the town hall and started telling my story until I got pointed in the right direction. I might have come off as a little aggressive, I will admit that, but I wanted something to get done. If I went in showing that I was serious and angry, then there was a better chance of something getting done about it. I had pictures of the wall that he put up and showed how it cut right through my grandma's garden. I told them that I wanted something done about the wall that he put up and not going to take for an answer that they couldn't do anything. I knew that it was probably going to end up going to court and having lawyers dish things out, but I knew there had to be something the town could do also. It turned out that I was right, and I was told that they had a contract with a land surveyor that did all of the work for the town. They also would look into records since building a wall would have needed a permit while a fence wouldn't have. At that point I calmed down finally and knew that I would just have to wait a couple days for the guy to come and look over the property to see who it belonged to. In the meantime, I found a lawyer and told him the situation about the neighbor trying to steal my grandparents' property while they were gone for a week. He was a super nice guy and told me to send him the information as soon as the land got looked over. No shock, he had built on our land and kept claiming that the survey we had done was wrong. We were lucky that we didn't have to go to court and instead were just able to sit down with the lawyers and try to work things out. The only thing he could come up with as a defense was that the mapping was wrong, and he wanted to hold off on anything until another company could come and look things over. My lawyer pointed out that the one we used was validated by the town and would hold up in court more than anything he could get. Basically, what I wanted was the wall to be taken down and damages to be given for my grandma's garden. This is where things got a little bit weird. Since he knew he didn't have a permit and would get in more trouble if he didn't, he agreed to take down the wall and put a fence back up. He was arguing though that the garden was his and that it didn't matter if he damaged it. He even admitted that it had been on my grandparents' property the entire time, but that he was the one planting the flowers. I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but if there was an image of a guy that didn't look like he planted roses and such, it would be this guy. I had proof and photos of my grandma with the flowers though. With all the evidence against him and even his own lawyer saying that he should settle instead of going to court, he gave in. He was going to take down the wall at his own cost and put up a fence again where it was supposed to be. Additionally, he gave my grandparents money so they could fix the land to make it fit for a garden again and buy replacements for the things he destroyed. I just can't get over somebody like this existing where they see old people and think they can just do anything they want. The sad part is that if they didn't have somebody like me to help, he might have gotten away with it. The whole time I was fighting against him, I could still hear my grandma crying, and the fact anybody could do that to an old woman makes me sick. If any of you reading this have grandparents, parents, or other elderly people in your life, please help them when they need it because society can sometimes suck for them. The next story is titled, "Move all the furniture to get new carpet." I don't like moving, I've never not paid a bill on time, and I take decent care of things because I don't like living in a place that's a shithole. My SO is tidy and responsible as well. I'm the one who deals with things like leases in the relationship, but he's happy to go along or push issues if needed. Because of this, we make pretty good and loyal tenants. So much so that our most recent landlord regularly praised us as his least annoying tenants, and during the pandemic when house prices were going up offered to sell us the house at a discount. More than he paid by a lot, but a lot less than adjacent houses were selling, and we're still well ahead at the current market. Anyway, 15 years ago, the place before this, I moved into an apartment with my SO for about $700 per month. It was 2-bedroom and had huge closets. So big I threatened to make a guest room out of one for my mom when she visited, since I was pretty sure I could fit a twin bed in. That got vetoed. It was pretty decent, but the carpet was some super cheap stuff that was only meant to last 3 to 5 years since they replaced it after every move out. No big complaints for the first 4 or so years. There were some roaches thanks to neighbors, but they dealt with it, and the water heater broke in the closet, but I didn't have anything too important there and they fixed the damage from that too. Meanwhile, the rent went up every year. Plus, there were added fees for upgrades. We agreed to pay for access to the new gym, for a monthly fee. I got a shaded parking spot, for a monthly fee. We got a cat and paid additional pet rent. Whatever, but I was up to about $900 per month by year 4. The 5th year was ending, and the carpet was indeed looking a bit rough. I'd paid myself to have it cleaned twice, but it was wearing. So, when it came time to renew the lease, I mentioned it and they said they'd look into replacing it for me, so I signed. I did remind them a few times that year, and so did my SO. He got them to give us another carpet cleaning for free, but no action. End of year 6. This time I say we need them to replace the carpet and that I'll move the furniture from each room as they're ready. They verbally agree and I sign. No action. I remind them and they tell me they can't do one room at a time. They can only do it all at once, and I'll have to move out all my furniture. They can rent us another apartment in the building that's for short-term use for a couple of weeks for like $500. What? I know that's a lie, that they can't do one room at a time. Not only does that not make sense, but remember when the water heater broke? It ruined the carpet in the closet and mold grew since it took about 2 days to notice. They had come in and replaced the carpet, only in that closet. Plus, they had verbally agreed. Got another carpet cleaning. End of year 7. New management. I told them about the prior years, and they made lots of understanding noises and said of course they could replace the carpet given it had been so long compared to the other units. It was near a military base. Most tenants stayed just a year or 2. I wrote that on the contract, which they didn't like, but we all signed for another year. Rent is now about $1,100. So, about a month later I remind them. Somehow, I get the same story as the old management had, that sure they can do it and will honor what was on the agreement that I wrote on, but only if they do it all at once rather than room by room, and we move out all the furniture for a week or 2. What? This time I don't even get an offer to rent a second apartment to temp move into. I have no idea where they thought we'd magically store furniture and ourselves for a week. Try again later that year, same answer. I warn them if we have to move all our furniture out to get new carpet, we won't be moving it back in. Nearing the end of year 7. The lease renews in February, renewal due in January. December, my SO starts looking at houses for rent and we start checking them out on the weekends. Because why not? We find a nice 4-bedroom for only $1,150 per month, $50 over my current place for close to 2 times the space, and spend a few weeks moving in. And guess what? It has brand new high-quality carpet. The last day to renew our lease or give move-out notice comes. We give notice. We and the cat are already sleeping at the new place. Immediately, I get asked why we're leaving and what they can do to make us stay. I bring up we've been here 8 years and the last 3 we were promised new carpet and ended up being told I could only have it if we moved all the furniture out at once. They had the gall to claim they were under new management, again, and hated to lose a good tenant that was one of their longest. They'd knock some fees off the rent and would absolutely replace the carpet, sure. Pretty sure they'd have to do all that and a lot more to get a new tenant in. I told them we'd already moved most of the furniture out, would finish by the end of the month, and they could do the carpet whenever they'd like because I no longer cared. They even gave me an offer in writing a week later that included 2 months free on the next lease, but we were already very much enjoying our nice new place and happily locked into a lease there. As promised, if we had to move all the furniture somewhere else to get new carpet, we would not be moving it back. I only wish I'd made and kept that threat sooner. The last story is titled, "A Very Expensive Check." This malicious compliance is not my own. It was related to me by my mother many decades ago, but it is also not hers. She just got to play her part in the story. But since she died decades before Reddit existed for her to share it with all you wonderful people, I'll pass it on for her. This is a case of an intended malicious compliance being countered by an even more malicious compliance. My mother is at this time a manager in the central processing office of a now defunct major regional bank, easily the largest bank in our region back in the day. She receives a rather odd check for processing and refuses to run it until she has the full story on what is happening. So, here's what she learns. A rancher has been in a land dispute with one of his neighbors, and it has not gone amicably. We are not privy to the exact nature of the issue, but it seems to have something to do with water rights. Either way, it ends up in court. And after a long, hard-fought battle of legal wills, the rancher loses and is ordered to pay a certain amount of damages to his neighbor by a certain date. Well, that is not a happy thing for the rancher. So, he decides that while he must pay, there is absolutely nothing in the court order that says he has to make it easy on his adversary. Malicious compliance engaged. He shaves a spot on the rump of one of his cows, and carefully writes out a check for the full amount of the court-ordered damages on the skin of the bovine. He then has one of his trucks deliver the cow to his neighbor to settle the account. A live chewing, pooping cow. After checking with the bank, the neighbor concludes that it is perfectly legal for the rancher to write a check on anything, and the rancher makes it perfectly clear that this is the only way he intends to settle the debt. But just like folks who decide to settle an annoying bill with thousands of coins sometimes find themselves victims of their own malicious intent, the neighbor's malicious compliance trumps the rancher's. The neighbor loads the cow onto one of his own trucks and takes it to the rancher's bank, the bank of issuance, and cashes it against a cashier's check made out to him for the same amount. This he then deposits at his own bank with no difficulty or challenge. Meanwhile, the rancher's bank has to order a truck and driver to deliver the cow check to its central processing office, several hours drive away. This is where my mother comes into the story. She has to cancel the check and process it. She uses a paper substitute to run through the computer system for it, just like they do for any checks that come in that are too badly wrinkled or damaged to run safely through the system. After the cow check has been properly processed, and the money deducted from the rancher's account, she then opts to not store the check with his other cancelled checks to return with his monthly statement, but instead orders it returned immediately to the rancher. And then, after the dust settles, the real fallout of the neighbor's malicious compliance is felt. Since the cow check involves a great deal of special handling at the bank's expense, the bank assesses appropriate fees that more than cover the expenses in processing it. If the neighbor cashes it at his own bank, he gets to pay those fees. But since he cashes it at the rancher's bank, the rancher now gets to pay what amounts to an additional 25% fee on top of the court-ordered settlement. The only cost to the neighbor was 10 miles of gas for the round trip to the bank, a trip he routinely makes anyway, and the time spent getting the bank to verify that the cow check is a legitimate instrument that can be cashed. When telling me this story, my mother tells me it is the most expensive check she ever processed. Thank you for listening.